Breath of the Wild is the best-selling Zelda game of all time, surpassing even Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, including their various platform releases and remakes. And it's clear to see why. It's universally considered one of the most important and straight-up best games ever. No other game quite captures the same feeling as exploring the ruins of Breath of the Wild's overworld. So, to the surprise of no one, we're getting a sequel to Breath of the Wild on the Switch sometime in the next few years, with Nintendo dropping a teaser trailer at E3 2019. The teaser trailers of Breath of the Wild and its upcoming sequel are night and day, the first highlighting the massive world and focus on exploration, while introducing the threat of the Guardians and the use of ancient Sheikah weaponry. In comparison to the open, bright teaser for Breath of the Wild, the sequel's is claustrophobic, confined to dark tunnels, and with a much stronger focus on the story. From the teaser alone, we can see that this game's a completely different beast to Breath of the Wild. So what do I want from it? What do I hope to see in the sequel to one of my favourite games of all time? Number 5. An intelligent Ganondorf. The Calamity Ganon was Breath of the Wild's primary antagonist, though it's absent for most of the game. It was a feral, raging beast trapped without a true physical form, whose raw power overwhelmed the Kingdom of Hyrule a century prior to the game, resulting in an apocalypse. Calamity Ganon as a villain felt like a nuclear fallout, its malice staining the world like radiation, which was focused at the epicenter of Hyrule Castle, where the bestial Calamity Ganon waged a silent war with Princess Zelda. This impersonal Ganon was the result of the development team wanting to portray it as a force of nature rather than a conventional villain. The world of Breath of the Wild is in itself such an important aspect of the game, and Calamity Ganon works in that it acts as a plague on this world, a direct opposition to the life and nature of Hyrule. But it seems that with the sequel, we're finally seeing the reason, the source, behind the Calamity Ganon, the decrepit body of Ganondorf, the Gerudo King, sealed deep below Hyrule. Ganondorf at first appears to be dead, his corpse mummified in the same way as the Sheikah monks, but by the end of the trailer he awakens. Ganondorf's seal and the awakening of his true, original body in the caves below Hyrule is the main focus for the trailer. They're definitely going for a different, far more personal feel with this Ganon. If the resurrected Gerudo King was still a mindless, raging force of nature like the Calamity, it almost defeats the point of the sequel. Breath of the Wild was a game in which a hero rises from the ashes to take down the monstrous, rampaging Calamity, and I hope that in Breath of the Wild 2, the same hero has to deal with the scheming, intelligent power behind this evil. Every appearance of Ganondorf in the series, not counting games in which he appears only in his demon boar form, is that of a powerful, highly intelligent warlock. His first appearance chronologically, Ocarina of Time, has him lure the hero of time, the player, into collecting the keys to the Sacred Realm so he can attempt to take the Triforce for himself, after falsely swearing fealty to the royal family as part of his scheme. In Twilight Princess, it's revealed that the supposed primary antagonist, Zant, is just a pawn, a man crazed by his incessant lust for power, who Ganondorf manipulated, using the Twilight to set his own plans in motion. And the Wind Waker, following Ganondorf's defeat in Ocarina of Time and Link's disappearance, the Gerudo King claws his way back from the jaws of oblivion to seize Hyrule once more, and is only stopped by a divine intervention by the ancient creators of the land. Centuries later, he again begins to set plans in motion, and at the climax of the game reveals the motivations behind his desires. The Wind Waker's Ganondorf is my absolute favourite Zelda villain, a man who truly believes he is just and right in his desire to rule. Ganondorf's story in The Wind Waker is compelling, but he lets his facade break down into malice when his prize is stripped from him, revealing the true madness behind the genius. Ganondorf's resurrected corpse appears to be the source of the malice, and therefore Calamity Ganon itself. But if this resurrected Ganondorf is just more crazy rage Ganon, why introduce his Gerudo form at all? I hope that instead, Ganondorf is the same cunning, manipulative villain he's been in all of his previous appearances. Number 4. Classic Zelda music. Zelda music is one of the absolute best things about the series. Breath of the Wild's music is something that took me a while to properly appreciate. After the incredible, heroic themes of the E3 trailer and the Switch trailer, I was expecting the game's soundtrack to hit just as hard. But instead we get a ghost, a suggestion of a soundtrack. For the most part, it's made up of slow, sparse notes. It's music that represents the corpse of Hyrule, an empty world littered with ruins. But with the sequel, Hyrule is, quite literally in one case, coming back to life. A long-forgotten threat has reawoken, and with it, the heroic, classic Zelda music should too. Ganondorf represents a tie to the history of Hyrule, and I'd love it if his awakening meant a return to traditional Zelda music, at least in part. Compared to other Zelda games, the player spends a huge amount of time in the overworld in Breath of the Wild, riding, walking, climbing and fighting. If the entire overworld had a single theme, like the Wind Waker's Great Sea or Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field, it would start to grate pretty soon. Ideally, a way to control what music plays when would be perfect, even just a slider to choose from calm ambient sound all the way up to classic energetic overworld music. Breath of the Wild 2 seems to be a return to Hyrule, at least a return to its most iconic threat, so I'd love to see a return to Hyrule's famous music. Number 3. A battle, not a trial. I love Breath of the Wild's Sheikah, a legendary, hyper-advanced civilization whose science and brilliance almost rivaled the might of the gods themselves, a power which they used to safeguard the world in the name of the goddess Hylia. A race who, even thousands of years after their apparent disbanding, exists to aid the hero and to test his courage in the form of countless shrines of trials across Hyrule. The Sheikah's presence in Breath of the Wild is so heavy in fact that, except for the 4 divine beasts in Hyrule Castle itself, which are dungeons poisoned by Calamity Ganon, every single dungeon and main challenge in the game is a trial given to Link by the Sheikah. Even after all 120 shrines are completed, and in the eyes of the monks Link has proven his worth as the hero, the game has 2 DLC expansions featuring the Trial of the Sword, a Sheikah challenge which powers up the Master Sword, and the Champion's Ballad, an elaborate trial from the Sheikah monk Maz Koshia. The monk himself is one of my all-time favourite Zelda bosses. The apparently decrepit and mobile remains of the Sheikah slowly reanimate in front of Link, offering him one final, personal trial. But the issue with Sheikah challenges is that it never feels like there's much at stake. The Sheikah aren't an adversary, they're trying to help Link with this training. Compared to venturing through the depths of the Shadow Temple and taking on Bongo Bongo in Ocarina of Time, or saving the guardian deity Valu from his torment by storming through Dragon Roost Cavern in the Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild's Sheikah trials lack a sense of urgency and gravity. For the sequel, I hope that we get very few, if any, trials set before us by ancient Sheikah. We've spent an entire game proving our worth in the original. This hero has already freed the divine beasts and slain Calamity Ganon. It's notable that in the sequel's teaser trailer, not a single Sheikah construct can be seen. No shrines, divine beasts, or towers. Breath of the Wild was a game about resurrection. Link is reborn as the hero and proves his worth, and now its sequel might deal with his true quest. I'd love for much of the sequel's dungeons and mini-dungeons to feel more dangerous, true threats rather than trials. Number 3. Crafting. Breath of the Wild seemed like a game which perfectly set up a crafting system, and then never implemented it. You travel the wilderness of Hyrule, mining for ore, felling trees for wood, killing monsters for drops, but then the actual uses for a lot of these materials are pretty underwhelming. What if you could bolster a sword with extra ore to increase its durability, or craft a suit of armour with red choo-choo jelly to protect yourself from heat? The closest Breath of the Wild came to a crafting system was its cooking system, where you can mix various materials and ingredients together to create dishes or elixirs to augment yourself. Or the Great Fairies, who in exchange for certain materials can upgrade your armour. But even this lacks the customization that a full crafting system could provide. With so many different materials, and likely even more in a sequel, I'd love to be able to use them in creative ways. During the reveal trailer of the sequel, we can see Link and Zelda moving a beast of burden through the cave system, which is packed with camping supplies, firewood, a lantern and even a woodcutter's axe. It's possible it's just a cutscene, or just part of the animal's design, but an emphasis on travelling supplies in the trailer gives me hope that we'll be able to do more with them this time around. Number 1. Ancient Dungeons. Breath of the Wild's overworld is incredible. It's by far the biggest in the Zelda series, packed full of monster hideouts, shrines, Korok puzzles, and that's pretty much it. While what is there this time in Hyrule is awesome, with the shrines themselves housing some of the coolest and most intuitive puzzles in the series, it did seem like something was missing from Breath of the Wild. There are times when you'd discover ancient ruins, a forgotten pocket of the Kingdom of Hyrule, in which a traditional Zelda dungeon would be perfect, only to find another shrine. Even some of the most interesting places in the game, like the Lanayru Promenade, the Forgotten Temple, or the Typhlo Ruins, all just hide a shrine. It's likely that Breath of the Wild sequel will take place, at least in part, in the same Hyrule as the original, but I'd like to see it packed with more stuff, like dungeons. We've seen that Ganondorf's resurrection caused Hyrule Castle to begin rising from the ground. What if other ancient structures also rose with it? A great stone forest temple in the Faron region, an abandoned mining facility in Death Mountain, or even the ruins of the Arbiter's grounds from Twilight Princess, which we know is buried somewhere below the Gerudo Desert in Breath of the Wild. Imagine if the desert execution ground rose from the sands, full of Gibdos and undead, hiding secrets forgotten to Hyrule for thousands of years. Whatever happens in the sequel, I think that if we're returning to Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, we need something new to keep things fresh. So what do you guys think? What are your hopes for Breath of the Wild's sequel? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like, it really helps the channel out, or subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.